Chapter 971. The Golden Dragon roar destroyed the Tyrant Dragon projection, but it couldn't stop Zhang Wuyu from continuing to charge forward in his Tyrant body state. Right at this moment, Golden Dragon Shakes the Earth appeared. Under Tang Wulin's expert control, 8 Golden Dragons emerged from beneath Zhang Wuyu's body almost at the exact same moment, forcibly propelling his gargantuan body into the air for around 7 or 8 meters. However, the Armageddon Tyrant Rush was Zhang Wuyu's sixth soul skill, and it wasn't going to be dispelled so easily, even though he was forced to change direction, but only delayed him for a moment before he spread his wings to control his body, then continued to hurtle toward Tang Wulin. However, with these 2 brief moments of respite, Tang Wulin had bought himself more than enough time. He adopted a wide stand with his left leg in the front and his right leg in the back while his spear was brandished before him. At the same time, the surface of his battle armor took on a mirror-like appearance, and brilliant light erupted from the dragon core within his chest. A dragon's roar then rang out as energy surged around his body. Clang! The Armageddon Tyrant Rush crashed into Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon Spear, which was being backed up by his Golden Dragon Tyrant body, and Zhang Wuyu's enormous body came to a complete standstill, creating quite a peculiar sight to behold. In contrast, Tang Wulin was flung back by the force of the devastating impact, and his entire body slid backward while his feet carved out a pair of trenches into the ground. Even so, his body was still extremely stable as he glided backward. His Dragon Moon battle armor flashed in a rapid manner, and the energy absorbed by his Golden Dragon Tyrant body was completely unleashed. He thrust his Golden Dragon Spear toward Zhang Wuyu, who had been hovering in midair from their prior clash, and a loud dragon's roar suddenly rang out. A massive Golden Dragon then erupted from his Golden Dragon Spear, and it was none other than his Golden Dragon shocks the heavens. Zhang Wuyu's entire body was trembling violently due to the enormous recoil force that he'd been struck by, and his vision was completely dark. In the next instant, golden light illuminated the darkness, but his body was also devoured by this light. A voice sounded beside his ears. More than 70% of your body has been destroyed. You have been deemed to be dead. You have suffered a loss. Your current record is 0 wins, 1 loss. Light flashed again, and all of the pain vanished. Zhang Wuyu abruptly discovered that he'd already arrived back at the place he was situated at before he entered the sports stadium. Light flashed again, and Tang Wulin also appeared beside him. However, the words 1 win, 0 losses appeared beside his nickname. I lost just like that. He hadn't used his full power during his sparring match with Tang Wulin last time as he was afraid of injuring him. However, everything was completely different on this occasion. He had lost in the most crushing manner, and he'd even unleashed his strongest ability, but Tang Wulin had still been able to defeat him with a single spear strike. Zhang Wuyu was completely rooted to the spot while Tang Wulin was grumbling to himself. What a waste of 1,000 federal credits. That ended way too quickly. What was he trying to say? Zhang Wuyu really wanted to yell at him to vent his frustration and indignation, but as a loser, he didn't feel as if he had the right to yell at anyone. He was a 6-ring Soul Emperor, yet he'd been completely and utterly demolished by this 5-ring Soul King. He'd always thought that no one of the same cultivation rank as he was would be a match for him, but he had just been defeated by someone below him in cultivation rank. He really didn't want to accept this loss, and he was still brimming with battle intent, but he had to admit that he had lost, and it had been an extremely convincing loss. He had lost to his opponent both in pure strength and in absolute power. Just how freakishly powerful was this guy? I'm leaving, Zhang Wuyu grumbled. Tang Wulin hurriedly followed along. Are you feeling down? Yes. Zhang Wuyu made no effort to hide what he was currently feeling. Tang Wulin consoled. The problem lies in our bloodlines. Your bloodline is too heavily impacted by mine, so there's no way you can perform at your best. We shouldn't be enemies in the first place. If we were comrades, you'd become far more powerful than ever before. In terms of true innate power, I may not be a match for you. Zhang Wuyu scratched his head as he thought back to the outrageous enhancements that Tang Wulin's violent Golden Dragon domain could bring to him. That makes sense. It's a pity that there are no team battles in this competition. Otherwise, the 2 of us would stomp all of the opposition. Tang Wulin couldn't help but chuckle internally. Zhang Wuyu's straightforwardness and resilience had always been his strengths. That's true. If there were 2-on-2 battles available, we'd be able to form a team. Thoughts of Du Yunna immediately appeared in his mind at the mention of 2-on-2 battles. Who could possibly have better synergy with him than she did? However, did he really want her to fight alongside him? Or did he want her to continue to rely on him in her amnesiac state? His emotions had always been quite complex toward Du Yunna, particularly due to the fact that no matter how he looked at her, he couldn't help but feel as if she were a fusion between Du Yue and Naya. In reality, the current Du Yunna was more like Naya in that Naya had also always been so dependent on him in the past. However, he could sense that she was still Du Yue. Just what had happened between them? This was a mystery that he was constantly mulling over. However, regardless of whether she was Du Yue or Naya, she was still her, and her love for him had never changed. That much had been confirmed to him when she had appeared to shield him with her own body in that dire situation. I have to become a major as quickly as possible. Tang Wulin clenched his fists with all his might. Only by becoming a major could he pay her regular visits. He didn't exit the battle net. Seeing as he'd already come in, he couldn't just leave without trying out a mecha battle. After arriving in a mecha area, he discovered that the situation was the same as that of the combat rooms in the Soulmaster area, as he still had to pay for entry. However, an additional option was presented to him, asking him if he'd like a melee combat mecha or a long-range attacking mecha. Tang Wulin chose the latter option without any hesitation. When he appeared on the competition platform, he discovered that his body was already situated within a mecha. The controls within the mecha belonged to that of the most ordinary generic mecha, and from the complexity of the controls, he could deduce that this was most likely a yellow mecha. Through the display screen within the mecha, he could see that the mecha was entirely of a pristine white color, and that it was holding a soul cannon. It also had a protective barrier equipped, and that was all of the equipment it had. Just a single soul cannon. Right at this moment, light flashed up ahead, and another mecha appeared before him. In terms of outward appearance, this mecha was larger than his, and it also appeared to be a bit heavier. The mecha was holding a claymore, which indicated that it was a melee combat mecha, and it was just as badly equipped as his mecha was. Tang Wulin couldn't help but burst into laughter. This kind of mecha battle was quite interesting. He adjusted the soul cannon in his hand, then briefly familiarized himself with the controls within the mecha, and at this point, the countdown had already begun. 3, 2, 1, begin. As soon as the electronic voice trailed off, the opposing mecha was already hurtling toward Tang Wulin like a rumbling bulldozer. The melee combat mecha was around 12 meters tall and weighed 8 tons, whereas the long-range attacking mecha was only around 10 meters tall and weighed 6.5 tons. Tang Wulin immediately controlled his mecha to unleash a cannon blast toward his oncoming opponent, then immediately turned and fled. In a battle between a long-range attacking unit and a melee combat unit, his top priority was to open up distance between them. The soul cannon blast was orange in color, and as soon as it was released, it instantly accelerated before flying toward the melee combat mecha. The opposing mecha reacted in a very agile manner as its body swayed slightly. It looked as if it were about to fall over, but it supported itself against the ground with its left hand, allowing it to evade the cannon blast before charging directly toward Tang Wulin again, and it hadn't slowed down much during that maneuver. The mecha pilot hadn't even used the propellers attached to the back of the mecha yet. Tang Wulin was rather impressed by his opponent's handling skills. At the same time, he twisted around and unleashed a string of continuous attacks with his soul cannon. The melee combat mecha appeared to be very mobile, and its body continued to weave from side to side, evading in an agile and consistent manner. In the meantime, it was constantly closing down the distance between itself and Tang Wulin, and the two mechas were now situated less than 50 meters away from one another. If he were to activate the propellers now, it would only take him half a second to reach Tang Wulin, and if a long-range attacking mecha were to allow a melee combat unit to get close to it, a tragedy would undoubtedly ensue for the former. The soul cannon required 3 seconds of cooldown time after every string of 10 continuous blasts, and Tang Wulin quickly grasped that pattern. Chapter 972. It wasn't too bad. At the very least, it wasn't horrendously weak. While he was gauging the properties of his soul cannon, he also activated his propeller. The propeller was behind the mecha, and it could help the mecha in flight, acceleration, and things like that. Generally speaking, melee combat mechas were always slightly faster than long-range attacking mechas. The opposing mecha may have been bulkier, but in reality, melee combat mechas were actually lighter in weight as they didn't have to carry massive soul batteries in order to support long-range offensive output as long-range attacking mechas did. As soon as Tang Wulin activated his propeller, his opponent also activated their propeller. If he'd been slower by even a split second, then the melee combat mecha would have rammed directly into him. The two figures virtually brushed right past one another before opening up some distance again. On this occasion, both mechas had already flown up into the air. The melee combat mecha had reacted extremely quickly. In the instant that it failed to crash into Tang Wulin, the mecha's claymore was immediately hurled through the air. The claymore flew forth as a streak of black light, immediately catching up to Tang Wulin, who was just beginning to slow down following that burst of propulsion force. The melee combat mecha's timing and accuracy in its attacks were both exemplary. What a powerful opponent this was. Tang Wulin was quite surprised, but that didn't slow down his reactions in the slightest. According to the rules of mecha battles, if one's mecha were to be destroyed, they'd be handed a loss even if the pilot could still battle. All of a sudden, Tang Wulin's long-range attacking mecha bent down and completed a very strange maneuver. Its entire body twisted around in midair, and it gently raised the stock of its soul cannon upward to parry the claymore away. At this point, the melee combat mecha had already begun its second acceleration and was flying directly toward Tang Wulin. Boom, 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 boom. 6 balls of light shot forth almost completely in unison. Tang Wulin had unleashed those attacks with his soul cannon despite the fact that his mecha had lost its balance in midair. The 6 cannon blasts were like plum flower petals that were very beautiful to behold, and they directly cut off the melee combat mecha. He hadn't immediately unleashed these cannon blasts right after he parried the claymore away. Instead, he launched these attacks during his opponent's second acceleration. After gaining speed through propulsion, it became a lot more difficult for melee combat mechas to change directions. If the mecha pilot would have forcibly changed directions, not only would the mecha itself come under intense strain, the mecha pilot would also be dealt an extremely heavy blow. Only mecha pilots with extremely advanced handling skills and a powerful enough mecha at their disposal would choose to change directions during a high-speed charge. The melee combat mecha that Tang Wulin was facing didn't choose that course of action. Instead, it chose to take his attack head-on. It was impossible for just a few blasts from a long-range soul cannon to break the protective barrier of a melee combat mecha. While flying toward the oncoming attacks, the mecha twisted around slightly to evade 4 of the 6 cannon blasts, only allowing the remaining 2 to strike its defensive barrier. Following 2 resounding booms, the mecha faltered momentarily in midair. Tang Wulin took advantage of this opportunity to open up some more distance between them. After having its attack thwarted, the melee combat mecha didn't rush forward to attack again. Instead, it swooped downward to try and pick up its sword from the ground. A melee combat mecha without a weapon was at a disadvantage against the long-range attacking mecha of the same caliber. The timing and accuracy in Tang Wulin's 6 cannon blasts had alerted the melee combat mecha pilot to the fact that he was not facing an easy opponent. Boom. A cannon blast shot forth with unerring accuracy, targeting the sword on the ground as opposed to the melee combat mecha. The cannon blast struck the hilt of the claymore, and the explosive force sent it flying up into the air. 3 more cannon blasts were then launched toward the melee combat mecha in a triangular formation to cut it off from the claymore. The melee combat mecha pilot harumphed coldly, and the mecha suddenly swooped downward to evade the 3 cannon blasts. But at this point, the claymore was already several dozens of meters in the air above it. Tang Wulin's mecha accelerated in midair, and he sped toward the claymore before grabbing onto the hilt with the mecha's left hand. It had to be said that the melee combat mecha pilot was extremely experienced. As soon as Tang Wulin rushed forward to grab the claymore, the melee combat mecha rose up into the air and activated its propeller without any hesitation, and it wasn't holding back in the slightest on this occasion. Its target was none other than that claymore. Even if it had to cop a few more cannon blasts, it had to recover its weapon. Meanwhile, Tang Wulin was rushing toward the same direction, so the distance between them was dwindling, and that was clearly beneficial to the melee combat mecha. Both of them had activated their propellers, but Tang Wulin had taken the initiative, and he'd already arrived in front of the claymore. Right at this moment, bright light suddenly erupted from the melee combat mecha, and countless ice spikes materialized in midair before converging toward Tang Wulin. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. He had been waiting for this moment. The vast majority of skilled mecha pilots were soul masters, and all soul masters had soul skills. A soul master who had chosen a melee combat mecha naturally had to possess abilities that were synergistic with their chosen mecha. This melee combat mecha pilot had finally been goaded into unleashing a soul skill. Generally speaking, during battles between mecha pilots, the first person to unleash a soul skill would be conceding a disadvantage as they'd be revealing their martial soul to their opponent first. The ice spikes materialized before converging toward Tang Wulin from all sides. However, Tang Wulin continued to charge along his original trajectory, and he didn't release his martial soul either. Instead, he reached out and grabbed onto the claymore with his left hand, then swung it through the air to unleash a series of sword projections. The sword projections were each around 3 feet in length, and they weren't overly powerful, but each and every one of them struck an ice spike with unerring accuracy. A vast expanse of icy mist exploded in midair, and at the same time, a string of loud booms rang out as 10 cannon blasts flew out of the icy mist, hurtling directly toward the oncoming melee combat mecha. With the icy mist acting as a smokescreen, the melee combat mecha pilot had completely failed to see how Tang Wulin had unleashed that attack. The mecha pilot had attacked Tang Wulin with those ice spikes in order to delay him so the distance between them could be closed down even further. However, much to his surprise, after Tang Wulin grabbed onto the claymore, he made no effort to open up further distance between them. Instead, he used the claymore to shatter all of the ice spikes while unleashing those 10 cannon blasts in rapid succession at point-blank range. The melee combat mecha crashed headfirst into the string of attack, and the 10 cannon blasts exploded one after another, forcing the mecha back down onto the ground. As a result, over 80% of the energy within the melee combat mecha's protective barrier had been expended. Only then did Tang Wulin turn around and flee into the distance. He was opening up some distance again, and also allowing his soul cannon the cooldown time it required. The melee combat mecha landed on the ground, and its pilot was feeling extremely frustrated. This was the same feeling that all melee mecha pilots were struck by when they couldn't get close to a long-range attacking mecha. Furthermore, it was quite apparent from Tang Wulin's swordsmanship that he was definitely not just a one-trick pony who specialized in long-range attacks. Instead, with that claymore in his hand, he was virtually half a melee combat mecha pilot. The melee combat mecha had lost its weapon, as well as most of the energy of its protective barrier. It was in a decidedly worse position compared to its opponent. In contrast, Tang Wulin was feeling quite elated. He had studied mecha handling in the Tang sect, and he'd specialized in long-range attacking mechas at the time. This was because he was already extremely proficient in close-quarters combat. So if he were to ever get a mecha, then a long-range attacking mecha would naturally be his only choice. It was exactly due to the fact that this wasn't some high-end mecha that he was able to pilot with such a high level of proficiency. Over 100 meters was opened up between the two mechas, and the 3-second cooldown period for Tang Wulin's soul cannon had already passed. Thus, he would be able to unleash another string of 10 continuous cannon blasts. The long-range attacking mecha courses offered by the Tang sect were definitely some of the best in the world. Over 20,000 years ago, the founder of the Tang sect, Tang San, had established a place for the Tang sect in the world through his extraordinary hidden weapon hand techniques, as well as the various types of hidden weapons that he later went on to invent. As such, if one had the intention of improving their long-range offensive prowess, the Tang sect was definitely the best place to learn. Tang Wulin hadn't had much mecha training, but he was supremely talented in this field. As a mecha pilot, his physical constitution definitely ranked among the best of the best. His body was able to handle far heavier impacts than the average mecha pilot. On top of that, he had Spirit Abyss realm spiritual power, and immense spiritual power was also extremely important for piloting mechas. Following this period of familiarization, he was really beginning to find his groove. I concede. The opposing mecha suddenly disappeared amid a flash of light. The text above Tang Wulin's head changed to 2 wins, 0 losses. The results for the Soul Master battles and mecha battles were stacked on top of one another. What? He conceded just like that. This battle's not over yet. Tang Wulin was completely speechless. How could his opponent have conceded so easily? It cost 2,000 federal credits just to access this combat room. At least fight until the very end. He was only just beginning to get into the zone, and his opponent had completely rained on his parade. However, regardless of what he thought, he was also teleported out of the combat venue and returned to the plaza amid a flash of light. What a waste of 2,000 federal credits. I have to ask Blood One to see if the Blood God Battalion is going to reimburse me for this. After those 2 battles, Tang Wulin chose to exit the BattleNet. Chapter 973. He had his own star cabin, so he could enter the star BattleNet whenever he wanted anyway. Following his battle with Jiang Wuyu, he really wanted to speak to Gu Yuna, so he decided to give her a call first. After exiting the star cabin, he did some stretches. This thing was quite decent. Even though it was a little rough around the edges, it wasn't uncomfortable in any way. After picking up his soul communicator, Tang Wulin attached his signal booster onto it with a pained look on his face. He had bought this signal booster with his accolades out of necessity as without it, there was no way that he'd have a strong enough signal to make any calls. However, he had to pay every time he used it, and all of his calls would be monitored by the Legion in case he tried to leak any confidential military information. Thankfully, the accolades that he'd earned through his forging could be used for this purpose. The call was connected. Ring ring, ring ring, ring ring. No one was picking up. Where had she gone? Tang Wulin dialed the number twice in quick succession, but no one was picking up, and he was starting to feel quite anxious. Gu Yuna was quite powerful, but after losing her memories, she had no idea how to use her own powers. What could he do? He couldn't leave the Legion to see her, so he could only continue to call her. Finally, after he dialed the number for the 6th time, the call was picked up. Father. Gu Yuna's elated voice rang out from the other end of the line. Gu Yue, where did you go? Tang Wuling sounded like a parent scolding his child. However, Gu Yuna seemed to be completely oblivious to the critical tone in his voice, and she replied, I went out to play. I had some roast meat, and it was really delicious. The roast meat uncle only charged me half the money. Tang Wuling continued, even if you go out to play, you have to take your soul communicator with you. I'll get worried if I can't contact you. All right. When are you coming to visit me, father? Gu Yuna's voice was filled with hope and anticipation. Tang Wuling replied, I'm currently participating in a competition, and I'll be able to visit you if I do well. The competition will commence in 2 days, so it'll probably be at least another month before it concludes. I'll go to visit you right after the competition ends. A month. Gu Yuna exclaimed in a pitiable voice. Be a patient girl now, Gu Yue. I'll call you every day. All right then. I'll wait for you here. You have to tell me in advance before you come back, father. Otherwise, I could be out playing again. All right, I'll make sure to tell you in advance. Tang Wuling was struck by an immense sense of satisfaction whenever he heard her voice. In reality, he was quite worried every time he dialed her number, wondering whether she already recovered her memories from the effects of the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum. His concern and anticipation coexisted alongside one another, making him feel very conflicted. When Gu Yuna wasn't picking up her communicator the first few times he called her, he was petrified that she'd recovered her memories and left, and only after hearing her voice were his concerns alleviated. What? You're not going to participate in the Star Battle.net Inter Federation competition? Why? This is a brilliant opportunity for you. With your powers, you would definitely do well in the competition, and that'll contribute greatly to bolstering your position in the spirit pagoda. So why wouldn't you participate? I'm sorry, teacher, I just don't want to participate in it, and there's no particular reason. I don't think I have to prove myself to anyone, so please explain the situation to the chairman, and tell him that I'm planning to go into seclusion to attempt a breakthrough to become a soul sage. You're going to attempt to make a breakthrough? Is that true? Yes, it's about time for me to make a breakthrough, so I'm going to go into seclusion for a while. I'll have to leave everything else to you, teacher, no problem. If you can progress to become a soul sage, everything will be different and no one will dare to say anything about you. You have my full support. Reimbursement. Keep dreaming. Are you telling me you don't have any money left? Aren't you a saint blacksmith? Blood One was looking at Tang Wuling in a speechless manner. Never would he have thought that Tang Wuling would request to meet him in order to discuss something like this. Tang Wuling wore a conflicted look on his face. But it's so expensive. I'm representing our Blood God Legion in this competition, so shouldn't I be sponsored? Just how stingy are you? Blood One couldn't help but burst into laughter. He didn't think that Tang Wuling would be such a cheapskate. Tang Wuling smiled and said, it's not that I'm stingy. The problem is that I really don't have much money. I was just a poor student before this, and both my cultivation and forging require a lot of money to support. I may be a saint blacksmith now, but I still don't have much savings. I had no time to forge in order to earn money before coming to our legion, and I can only forge for accolades here. Also, these accolades can't contribute to my promotions, and apparently, that rule was specifically introduced to target me. What's the point in forging if I can't even earn promotions? Blood One pondered the issue momentarily before replying. The soldiers of our Blood God Legion don't have much of a concept of money, but even if your forging accolades can't contribute toward promotions, you should be able to exchange them for money. How about this? I can help you convert your forging accolades to federal credits at a 1 to 100 rate. You can calculate that for yourself. 1 to 100. Tang Wuling immediately felt this to be a bad deal. That's way too low. In the outside world, a saint blacksmith can earn around 10 million credits per job, but each job I complete in the Legion only earns me around 1,000 to 2,000 accolades. Even soul refinement jobs will earn me around 10,000 to 20,000 accolades, so that's only 1 million to 2 million federal credits per job. Take it or leave it. I don't care. Blood One waved a dismissive hand as if he were shooing away a fly. I'll take it. Tang Wuling hurriedly said with a fawning smile. It was a good thing that he had the option to exchange some extra accolades for federal credits. In reality, he wasn't actually short on money, so in comparison, it was better for him to exchange his accolades for some valuable resources. The commissariat had a very good supply of all types of uncommon metals, as well as some precious materials that were very difficult to source in the outside world. All of these things could be exchanged for using accolades, so his forging accolades were certainly far from useless even if they couldn't contribute toward promotions. After exiting the Blood God Battalion, Tang Wuling headed straight to his forging room. There were still 2 days until the commencement of the Star Battle.net Inter Federation competition, and it was only going to be the regional competition, so at the very least, there should be no issues for him during the first few rounds. If he really did encounter an insanely powerful being during the early rounds, then that would simply be a matter of bad luck, and he couldn't do anything about that aside from giving everything he had to strive toward a promotion to the major rank. However, at the same time, he had devised a plan for himself. Mu Yi had always advocated to him that there was no clash between battle armor and mechas. Most high-level battle armor masters also possessed their own mechas, but it was very rare for top-tier battle armor masters to also be top-tier mecha pilots. In the past, Mu Yi had gone down the wrong path and dedicated all of his time and effort toward mechas. In the end, he became a divine-grade mecha pilot, but he had passed the ideal battle armor cultivation age range at that point, and lost the opportunity to become a 4-word battle armor master. In contrast, Tang Wuling's situation was far superior to his. He was only 21 years of age, yet he was already a 2-word battle armor master. Furthermore, he could attempt to forge metals for his suit of 3-word battle armor as soon as he became a 6-ring soul emperor. After all, he was already a saint blacksmith, so he definitely had the required skills. Following a few more years of accumulation, he'd most definitely be able to become a 3-word battle armor master. As for mechas, he had never had sufficient time and resources to dedicate to this field, so he'd never paid much attention to it. Now, he had already decided that he was going to forge a suitable mecha for himself, and he was going to make a black mecha from the get-go. At the same time, this had to be a black mecha with evolutionary potential, just like his suit of battle armor. This would require a vast amount of resources. With his skills as a saint blacksmith, he'd be able to forge the metals required, but at the same time, he had many things to learn about circuits and mecha designs. He had considered requesting assistance from another, but he could only create a mecha that was ideal for himself if he were to do everything on his own. Mecha design wasn't as complex as it was for battle armor, as battle armor had to be able to fuse into one's body. In contrast, mechas were a lot larger in size, and they were far easier to design and customize. As such, Tang Wuling had decided that he was going to create a mecha for himself solely on his own. As for the resources required to accomplish this goal, those naturally had to be exchanged for using accolades. As such, he had to earn more accolades. Prior to visiting the Blood God Battalion, he had received a call from Wan Yakshu that a 3-word battle armor master of the Legion was going to visit him to have his suit of battle armor repaired. Tang Wuling was given quite a surprise when he discovered that the aforementioned 3-word battle armor master was none other than Xu Weitao. He was no longer a complete newbie who didn't know anyone in the Blood God Legion, so he naturally immediately identified that this was the commander of the Blood Division of the Blood God Legion. He was one of the 14 most powerful beings in the entire Legion, a titled Douluo who was also a 3-word battle armor master. Wan Yakshu was standing beside Xu Weitao, and she gave Tang Wuling a meaningful look. Tang Wuling hurriedly stood up straight and extended a military salute. Greetings, superior. Xu Weitao patted his shoulder in a benevolent manner and said, you're already a member of the Blood God Battalion, so you're no longer under the direct control of the Legion. As such, you can just call me Old Man Xu. Oh, Old Man Xu. Chapter 974. Tang Wuling didn't think that Xu Weitao would be so easygoing. Weren't all soldiers supposed to be quite strict and dogmatic? Xu Weitao's appearance epitomized that of the ideal soldier. He was extremely tall and broad, towering above even Tang Wuling, and he had a set of wide shoulders, as well as a set of hard facial features that looked as if they'd been chiseled out of stone. No matter how one looked at him, he didn't seem to be an easygoing man. His blood. Division consisted entirely of melee combat soldiers, and one only had to look at Zhang Wuyu's first battalion to get an indication of just how powerful this division was. I'm not sure that's appropriate, Superior, Tang Wulin said in a hesitant voice. Shu Weitao chuckled. There's nothing inappropriate about it. All of the people from the Blood God Battalion call me Old Man Shu. You can go and ask them if you don't believe me. Oh, actually, that's not true. Only Blood 7, Blood 8, and Blood 9 call me Old Man Shu. Everyone else calls me Little Shu. Tang Wulin was rendered completely speechless. He was only a fringe member of the Blood God Battalion. How could he be compared with the actual Blood Gods? Long Yakshu interjected. Don't get hung up on the little details. Wulin, you can call him Uncle Shu just like I do. Open the door so we can go in. She didn't have the key to the workshop, so she could only wait for Tang Wulin to open the door for them. Tang Wulin hurriedly invited the two of them into the room. Shu Weitao looked around at the forging room with a smile and said, I heard from Yakshu that you're a Saint Blacksmith. Your skills would undoubtedly be extremely valuable to the entire Legion. The Vice Legion Commander prohibited you from using your forging accolades for promotions in order to avoid envious reactions from everyone else in the Legion, and I hope you can understand that. If you have any requirements or requests, feel free to tell me, and we'll do our best to satisfy you. The higher-ups of the Legion were feeling rather apologetic about their decision to prohibit Tang Wulin from earning promotions using his forging accolades. Furthermore, he was the only Saint Blacksmith in the entire Legion, so even the highest-ranking officials in the Legion would most likely require his services at one point or another. Tang Wulin shook his head and said, It's all right, Uncle Shu. I understand why this rule was introduced. All of the other soldiers in the Legion are earning accolades by putting their lives on the line during battles, so it's only right that they deserve promotions. In contrast, my forging is completely insignificant. Despite what he was saying, there was a clear undertone of displeasure in his words. He had honed his forging skills through countless hours of toil and hardships. He'd been forging ever since he was 6 years old, so he'd been a blacksmith for 15 years. Furthermore, he was also the youngest Saint Blacksmith on the entire continent. Shu Weitao smiled and said, I know that this is a bitter pill to swallow, but you've already joined the Blood God Battalion, so you'll definitely be shooting up the ranks in no time. The Legion will also supply you more resources, and you can state some requests for us as well as long as they're within reason. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face, and he said, All right, then I'll go right ahead. I would like a larger workshop, preferably connected to a warehouse that's large enough to house mechas. That'll be very beneficial to my work, and that's the only request that I have. Shu Weitao faltered slightly upon hearing this. He had visited Tang Wulin today not just to have his battle armor repaired, but also to extend an olive branch. After all, he had to offer Tang Wulin some reconciliation after the new rule that was introduced specifically to target him. The decision not to allow Tang Wulin to use his forging accolades for promotions was quite a controversial one among the higher-ups of the Legion. Tang Wulin came from Shrek Academy and was one of the current Shrek 7 monsters, so the Blood God Legion didn't have to be concerned that he would bring any trouble to the Legion. On top of that, earning accolades through forging was a legitimate source of income. However, it was still decided in the end that the original decision wouldn't be revoked. Even so, they still had to do their best to appease this Saint Blacksmith. In a sense, the Blood God Battalion was almost a separate entity from the Blood God Legion, and the fact that Blood 1 had made Tang Wulin a fringe member of the Blood God Battalion after only such a short time suggested that he was perhaps displeased with the Legion's treatment of Tang Wulin. This was a man who was most likely going to stand at the pinnacle of the entire Legion someday, so Shu Weitao had visited him with the intention of exercising a policy of appeasement. He was willing to accept any demands from Tang Wulin as long as they weren't too unreasonable, but who would have thought that Tang Wulin would only state such a basic requirement? Tang Wulin was indeed quite a cheapskate, but he was also very smart. He was naturally aware that he could take advantage of this opportunity to essentially extort the Legion for a lot of resources. However, he didn't know just how much the Legion would be willing to give him, and any resources that were given to him certainly wouldn't be provided with no strings attached. If he were to take too much from the Legion, then he would owe them a favor, and he wouldn't be able to turn down the future forging jobs that the Legion asked him to complete. He wanted to dedicate more of his time to cultivation, and he also had to participate in the upcoming competition. Furthermore, he would definitely have to leave the Blood God Legion someday, so it would be best if he didn't owe the Legion any favors. As such, Tang Wulin's thought process was very clear, and he only stated a very basic request. That's simple. There's a perfect place right behind our Legion's mecha warehouse, and I can get that arranged for you. During the Abyssal Tide a few days ago, there's one part of my battle armor that was damaged quite severely, and it may need to be reforged. Can you take a look at it for me? Light flashed from Shu Weitao's right shoulder as he spoke, and he grabbed onto his shoulder with his left hand before a dark silver cauldron appeared in his grasp. Tang Wulin had already noticed that his right shoulder seemed to be rather stiff, which indicated that he had most likely been injured during the Abyssal Tide. Tang Wulin accepted the cauldron before taking a look at it, and he couldn't help but draw a sharp breath in response to what he was seeing. Generally speaking, suits of 3-word battle armor were constructed from soul-refined metals, and there was a massive qualitative improvement from 2-word battle armor to 3-word battle armor. With so few Saint Blacksmiths on the continent, the number of 3-word battle armor masters was also less than 10% that of 2-word battle armor masters. Soul-refined metals already possessed life force and intelligence, so they possessed extremely potent self-regenerative abilities. As such, normal damage could easily be self-repaired by soul-refined metals, but the damage sustained by this cauldron was far from normal. There was only one gash that had been inflicted onto the cauldron, but that gash was straight down the middle. What was even more terrifying was that there were wisps of energy that were constantly eroding the area around the gash, thereby preventing the cauldron from repairing itself. These wisps of energy were like countless tiny greyish-white worms, and they presented an extremely harrowing sight to behold. Just what kind of power could have resulted in this kind of damage? The abyssal plane really was filled with powerful beings. Tang Wulin was quite astonished by what he saw, but at the same time, he was pondering a viable course of action to repair this cauldron. The cauldron was clearly unable to repair itself, and if recovery couldn't be facilitated even following injections of soul power, then the piece of armor could simply be beyond repair. He was a blacksmith, not a battle armor maker, so if he wanted to repair this piece of battle armor rather than reforge it from scratch, then there was only one way. He had to somehow make the cauldron's self-repair ability more potent than that strange energy's destructive ability. Only then would the piece of battle armor be able to recover. After pondering the issue for a moment, Tang Wulin's eyes suddenly lit up as an idea occurred to him. He carried the cauldron over to his forging bench before placing it down, but he didn't bring out his forging hammers. Instead, he brushed a hand over his glabella to release his golden dragon spear. Shu Weitao's eyes immediately lit up at the sight of the golden dragon spear. That's a fine weapon. He had seen Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear in pieces of video footage in the past, but the spear seems to have become different since then. The innate aura of sharpness emanating from the spear was quite fearsome to behold. Tang Wulin gave him a smile before gently tapping the tip of the spear against the cauldron. A peculiar turn of events then unfolded. Golden light flashed from the golden dragon spear, and the wisps of energy on the cauldron immediately shattered before flowing into the spear. Tang Wulin also shuddered slightly as a burst of rich energy was injected into his body through the golden dragon spear. The influx of energy had completely reinvigorated him, and his dragon core abruptly lit up. There didn't seem to be much energy eroding the cauldron, but it was extremely rich and dense. Tang Wulin felt as if he'd just absorbed around the same amount of energy that he'd received from killing a barn, and a pleased smile appeared on his face. Chapter 975. Without the relentless erosion from that strange energy, a faint layer of white light immediately appeared over the cauldron, and the gash began to seal in a slow yet steady manner. Tang Wulin carried the cauldron over to Shu Weitao and said, "All done, Uncle Shu." Shu Weitao had witnessed this entire process, and he had an astonished look on his face as he said, "How did you do that? That wasn't forging, as far as I could tell. This energy comes from the demonic centipede puppet monic of the 101st abyssal level. How did you dispel it so easily? Back when its energy first infiltrated my body, I had to expend a lot of power before I finally managed to recover from that injury. If I'd known that you could get rid of that energy so easily, I would have just come to you." A wry smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face in response. "I'm not a healer, so my ability won't work on life forms. It's only applicable to metals." If he would pierce the golden dragon spear into Shu Weitao's body, it would immediately begin to suck away his life force, and that would inflict even more damage than the power of that demonic centipede puppet monarch. Shu Weitao nodded with a peculiar look on his face. The more he learned about this young man, the more he came to realize just how exceptional he was. It was no wonder that the Blood God Battalion had swooped in to take him so quickly. If he'd known all of this from the beginning, he wouldn't have given the Blood God Battalion a chance to take Tang Wulin. I originally planned to have this cauldron reforged. A piece of soul-refined metal required to make a cauldron like this will cost at least 20,000 accolades, so I'll pay you according to that number, Shu Weitao offered. Tang Wulin hurriedly said, "There's no need for that, Uncle Shu. I barely did anything, so you don't have to give me any accolades." Shu Weitao insisted in a serious voice, "I can't just employ your services for free. The fact that you didn't have to do much is beside the point. The fact of the matter is that I had my cauldron repaired by you. That is a testament to your skills, but I still have to pay you nonetheless. Otherwise, I'd be taking advantage of you. If you want to thank me, then you can prioritize my forging jobs in the future. Besides, I've always harbored ambitions of becoming a four-word battle armor. Perhaps he'll already be a divine blacksmith by then, and I'll have to come to you again." Shu Weitao insisted on giving Tang Wulin 20,000 accolades before departing. Long Yakshu didn't depart with him, and she was currently appraising Tang Wulin with a peculiar look on her face. Tang Wulin extended his blood god bracelet toward her and said, "Here's your half. These accolades can't be used for promotions, but you can still buy things with them." This workshop had been sponsored by Long Yakshu in the beginning, and it was agreed that they'd be splitting the profits evenly between one another. However, only after witnessing Tang Wulin's skills did Long Yakshu come to realize just how unfair this agreement was. "You don't need to give your accolades to me. You earned everything on your own, and I." Long Yakshu's voice trailed off mid-sentence. Tang Wulin smiled and said, "Didn't you hear what Uncle Shu just said? Just because I'm earning these accolades doesn't change the fact that you sponsored me in the very beginning. Without your help, I wouldn't even have this workshop, so you deserve half the profits. Come on, Lady Boss, it's time to take your share." Long Yakshu blushed slightly upon hearing the words Lady Boss, and she didn't make any further effort to turn down her share of the profits. In China, the term Lady Boss can refer to a business owner who's a woman, but also the wife of a male business owner, so it's kind of an implicit term, hence the blush. Instead, she merely said, "Tell me if you're ever short on accolades." "I will. It's about time you moved this workshop to a larger space. By the way, did you enter the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition?" Long Yakshu nodded in response. "I'm registered to compete. Most of the members of our legion who are 5-ring Soul Kings and above have registered. I reckon our legion will dominate the Western competition region, especially considering there aren't that many cities in the entire Western competition region." A wry smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. "Looks like it's not a good thing that we're in the Western competition region." Indeed, among the 25,000 soldiers of the Blood God Legion, there had to be thousands of Soul Masters that were above the Soul King stage and below the titled Douluo stage. They were going to be facing countless powerful competitors. Jiang Wuyu was already very powerful, and if it weren't for Tang Wulin's bloodline advantage, it would be rather difficult for him to defeat Jiang Wuyu. Even so, he was only a lieutenant colonel, so there had to be many more Soul Masters in the legion who were more powerful than him, yet hadn't attained suits of 3-word battle armor yet. He would have to give everything he had if he wanted to make it to the finals. What was of the greatest concern to Tang Wulin wasn't the Soul Master battles. After all, he had attained his Dragon Core now, so he was relatively confident in the Soul Master battle portion. However, the Mecha battles wouldn't be so easy for him. The Mecha pilots of the Blood God Legion were constantly fighting on the battlefield and honing their skill against abyssal creatures. In terms of practical combat prowess, the Mecha pilots of the Blood God Legion were definitely among the best in the entire federal military, so it would definitely not be an easy task to fight off such fierce competition. The Mecha pilot that he'd encountered in the combat room had already been quite powerful. If it weren't for the fact that they'd been unfamiliar with his abilities and were overly aggressive with their attacks, it would not have been so easy for him to win that battle. Furthermore, as he progressed through the rounds, the Mecha pilots that he faced were only going to become more and more powerful. This was definitely going to be harder than Soul Master battles, as one would immediately be handed a loss once their Mecha became damaged to a certain extent. Just thinking about it was giving him a headache. "Did you register as well?" Long Yakshu asked. "Yes." Long Yakshu asked, "What are you going to do if you encounter me in one of the rounds?" Tang Wulin faltered slightly upon hearing this. "I guess I can go easy and let you last a little longer." Long Yakshu stomped down onto his foot in an enraged manner. "What do you mean let me last a little longer? You should concede right away." Tang Wulin winced, and a rare smile appeared on his face. "But what about the openness, fairness, and impartiality of the competition?" Long Yakshu scoffed. "You can throw all that out the window. What's your nickname? Tell me." Tang Wulin shook his head with an expression that was filled with grief and indignation. "No." Long Yakshu ground her foot into the back of Tang Wulin's foot and insisted, "Tell me." Tang Wulin replied in a resigned manner, "My nickname is Little Tang." Only then did Long Yakshu smile and disclose, "My nickname is Little Shui. You know what to do if you come up against me, right? I have a mission. The Blood God Battalion gave me a mission. They're going to evict me from the Blood God Battalion if I don't make it to the finals." Tang Wulin lied without even batting a single eyelid. Long Yakshu faltered slightly upon hearing this. "Is that true?" Tang Wulin replied in a serious manner, "Of course it is." Long Yakshu harumphed. "Then you better pray that you don't come up against me. I'm going now." "Are you going to stay here?" Tang Wulin nodded in response. "I want to practice my forging for a while." 2 days passed by in the blink of an eye, and aside from his cultivation, Tang Wulin dedicated all of his time to learning about mechas and completing some forging jobs. There were only very few people in the Legion who were aware of the fact that he was a saint blacksmith, and he was only taking soul refinement jobs, so he wasn't getting much work. Shu Weitao had acted very quickly, organizing a new site for his workshop the very next day, and the forging bench, as well as everything else, had all been transported over to that new workshop. This was a private space with a designated warehouse attached. During these past few days, Tang Wulin also logged onto the Star Battle.net once every day. Following his registration, Tang Wulin had already been notified of his exact competition times, and he had to have already logged onto the Battle.net before the stipulated time. The first battle was going to take place tonight at 8 p.m. For some reason, he was even more excited to participate in the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition than he was for the competition in the Douluo Empire. Perhaps it was due to the fact that this was a competition that encompassed the entire Federation. He was going to face all of the most powerful opponents in the entire Federation below the titled Douluo level, and Blood One had undoubtedly ordered him to participate in this competition as a form of training. Even back in Shrek Academy, tapping into one's latent potential through practical combat had always been highly advocated. During this competition, he could fight to his heart's content without having to worry about harming his opponent. "Welcome, Little Tang. You have logged onto the Star Battle.net. There is still half an hour left before your battle. Please head to the Soul Master Battle area lobby right away." Tang Wulin chose this exact time to log onto the Battle.net, and he was immediately greeted by an electronic notification as soon as he logged on. He was going to be participating in the first elimination round of the Soul Master segment of the Western competition region, and the first elimination round of the Mecha segment was going to be taking place the next day. The different segments had been scheduled for different days precisely to cater to participants like Tang Wulin, who registered for both modes of battle. Tang Wulin had still underestimated the overall period of time that this competition would be in progress for. According to the competition schedule, it was most likely going to take 3 months for the entire competition to run its course. Tang Wulin had already decided that he was going to apply for a break with Blood One as soon as he progressed to the finals so he could visit Guyuna. The round had already commenced at noon, and there were already countless participants wearing white masks with strings of text above their heads around the sports stadium of the Western competition region. The text above Tang Wulin's head currently indicated that his battle record was 5 wins and 0 losses. He didn't participate in too many practice matches as he already had a vast wealth of practical combat experience, and he didn't want to waste his money. "Your battle will commence in 1 minute." It was finally time for his match, and Tang Wulin took a deep breath. Prior to logging onto the Star Battle.net, he'd already primed himself to his peak condition. Golden light flashed, and his surroundings warped and twisted. In the next instant, he found himself on the competition platform. Chapter 976. He was standing across from an opponent who was also wearing a white mask, and to Tang Wulin's surprise, his opponent's nickname had been concealed. This was clearly an extra layer of confidentiality that had been implemented during the official competition. A faint smile appeared on his face. Long Yakshu couldn't say anything now as they wouldn't be able to identify one another even if they were to face each other in the competition. 3, 2, 1, begin. Just as Tang Wulin was thinking about how pleased he was with the measures taken by the Star Battle.net to ensure confidentiality, the electronic voice had completed its countdown and officially announced the commencement of his first battle in the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition. As soon as the countdown concluded, 4 soul rings, 2 yellow and 2 purple, appeared beneath his opponent's feet. He raised his right hand and pointed up ahead, upon which a vast expanse of red light rose up into the air. One fist-sized fireball after another then appeared in midair before flying directly toward Tang Wulin. A 4-ring soul ancestor, Tang Wulin was struck by the urge to laugh. Had his horrendous luck finally taken a turn for the better? A series of blue-silver emperor vines appeared around him, and he remained standing on the spot as if he couldn't even see the oncoming fireballs. Immediately thereafter, the blue-silver emperor vines spread rapidly toward his opponent like a series of giant pythons. A dozen or so blue-silver emperor vines rose up into the air, shattering the vast expanse of fireballs in the air and reducing them to specks of flames amid a string of explosions. They then pounced toward the soul master in a frenzy like a series of giant tentacles. It was quite clear that the 4-ring soul ancestor had been completely rooted to the spot. His mask made it impossible to see the expression on his face, but he was clearly becoming slightly panicked in his control over his martial soul. Fire attribute soul power surged forth as he hurriedly activated another soul ring, releasing a massive fireball that hurtled directly toward Tang Wulin. As a fire attribute soul master, he'd be at a great advantage if he were facing a normal plant system martial soul. Everyone knew that fire trumped wood, so his flames should have been able to dominate his opponent's spines. However, Tang Wulin's blue-silver emperor was certainly not an ordinary martial soul. It was the emperor of the plant world, and it had constantly been affected in a subtle yet profound way by Tang Wulin's golden dragon king bloodline. As a result, the blue-silver emperor vines were beginning to resemble powerful worms as they sped toward his opponent. The giant fireball was punctured by a blue-silver emperor vine, yet the vine wasn't even scorched in the slightest. Under the illumination of the giant fireball, the fire attribute soul ancestor could even see that the giant vine was shimmering like a blue crystal, and there were golden veins within the vine that resembled a skeletal structure. What the hell is this thing? The soul ancestor was on the verge of tears. At this cultivation rank, he naturally knew that he wouldn't be able to do particularly well in such a major competition, but he didn't want to be eliminated during the first round. Unfortunately, reality could be very brutal at times. His fire attribute soul skills were destroyed one after another, and he could only look on in despair as the oncoming vines constricted his body in a frenzy, then swung him into the air before slamming him viciously into the ground. This battle is over, the electronic voice announced in a concise manner. This battle had been far too easy for him. He had completely and utterly crushed his opponent, and throughout this entire battle, all he had done was take a few steps forward. His golden dragon king bloodline provided him with a series of immensely powerful abilities, so he was using his martial soul less and less in battle now. However, after using his blue-silver emperor vines for long-range binding during that battle, he discovered that his blue-silver emperor vines had undergone some changes. There was a system of net-like patterns running all over the surface of each and every blue-silver emperor vine, and these patterns strongly resembled the ones that had once appeared on his body. Could it be that his blue-silver emperor vines would also grow scales in the future? His opponent was a 4-ring soul ancestor, but their soul skills hadn't inflicted any damage onto his blue-silver emperor vines at all. He had also used his blue-silver emperor vines during his battle against the abyssal creatures, but they hadn't been very effective during that battle. Looking at it now, the problem was that his opponents had been too powerful, rather than his blue-silver emperor vines being too weak, and that was why his martial soul had been unable to display the extent of its power. During this battle, the blue-silver emperor vines had given him a massively pleasant surprise. They were currently already powerful enough to match many melee combat soul weapons, and they'd be useful in both soul master and mecha battles. Would it be easy for a normal mecha to escape from his blue-silver emperor's bind ability? The answer was, of course, no. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. One win. After exiting the competition venue, the text above Tang Wulin's head had already been altered. The words Little Tang had adopted a faint golden color, and the win/loss counter had been replaced by a golden arrow that was pointing upward. This clearly indicated that he'd progressed to the next round. Thinking back to how he had felt while using his blue-silver emperor martial soul, Tang Wulin was becoming more and more convinced that this competition was going to be extremely beneficial to him. During these past few years, his powers had progressed far too quickly. In particular, the 3 years that he'd spent in the Dragon Valley had improved his bloodline power to an extraordinary extent. However, his constant rapid improvement inevitably resulted in a failure to consolidate his current abilities, and the best way to do that was through practical battles. An important step that he had to take now was to integrate his martial soul and bloodline power so they could work together effectively. His greatest advantage was that he had both soul power and bloodline power at his disposal, and he had to learn to make full use of that unique advantage. Tang Wulin made a decision there and then that he was going to dedicate more of his time to cultivating his soul power. He could sense that once he obtained a soul core, it would be able to work together with his dragon core to effect some significant changes within his body. After that, he'd have absolute confidence in breaking his 10th seal. You're doing extremely well. Just as Tang Wulin was pondering all of these thoughts, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The voice came very abruptly, and he was given quite a fright, but his heart was then quickly filled with excitement. Old Tang! Old Tang had been hibernating for a very long time, and it had been many years since it had offered any guidance to Tang Wulin. He didn't think that Old Tang would suddenly awaken at a time like this. You're very correct. If you can attain a soul core, then your 2 major energy cores will be able to resonate with one another. A chemical reaction will then ensue, and it'll most definitely be a beneficial reaction to you. Your condition is far better than I'd imagined it would be. Looks like you must have encountered some great opportunities during my hibernation. It's a very encouraging sign that you've materialized a blood essence core. This is an exceptional foundation. The fact that you've materialized a blood essence core before a soul core has finally shown me a glimmer of hope that you'll be able to absorb the entirety of the Golden Dragon King's essence. Old Tang's voice was filled with elation, and Tang Wulin reflexively closed his eyes. His consciousness soon entered the same hall that Old Tang was situated in. Old Tang was standing with his hands clasped behind his back, and he wore a smile on his face. He seemed to have become slightly younger in appearance, as if he'd been rejuvenated somehow. Why did you hibernate for so long, Old Tang? Tang Wulin asked in a puzzled manner. Old Tang smiled and shook his head as he said, I've constantly been trying to sense the call from afar, so I dedicated all of my remaining power to doing that. You've always been progressing very smoothly, and you didn't need my guidance. Now, you finally possess the power to protect yourself, so what you have to do next is collate everything that you have and consolidate it. In particular, that blood essence power of yours is a unique and extremely powerful ability at your disposal. To put it in simpler terms, if you can absorb all of the essence within the 18 Golden Dragon King seals, then in a sense, you will become the new Golden Dragon King. In fact, you'll even outstrip the old Golden Dragon King. Chapter 977. The new Golden Dragon King? Tang Wulin was looking at Old Tang in a surprised manner. This was the first time that he'd heard Old Tang make such a bold declaration. Old Tang chuckled in response. Indeed, you will be the new Golden Dragon King. The essence of the Golden Dragon King is contained entirely within your body. This energy can take your life at any moment, but if you can completely absorb and digest it, then you will undoubtedly attain all of its power. However, I must warn you that you aren't absolutely safe, even though you've attained a Dragon Core. The final 9 Golden Dragon King seals contain the true power of the Golden Dragon King, and the first 9 seals provided nothing more than a process for you to adjust to the Golden Dragon King's power. Don't be lured into a false sense of security, thinking that your Dragon Core will keep you safe from everything. With your current physical constitution, it's still going to be quite dangerous for you to break the 10th seal, but you should be ready by the time you manifest a Soul Core as well. Tang Wulin was quite stunned to hear this. He had thought that with the drastic improvements in his physical constitution, it would be an easy task asked for him to break the 10th seal. However, Old Tang's words clearly indicated that things weren't as optimistic as he'd imagined. But why? Old Tang, I feel like my physical constitution is already very powerful, especially now that I have a dragon core. Can't I just use my dragon core to directly absorb the essence of the Golden Dragon King? Old Tang shook his head and replied in a serious voice. It's nowhere near as easy as you think. I chose to awaken at this time solely because I wanted to caution you against excessive optimism. Not only do the final 9 Golden Dragon King seals contain terrifying power, most importantly, they also contain shreds of the Golden Dragon King's will. No one knows what's contained within those shreds of will, but with how violent and ferocious the Golden Dragon King was, its will is definitely going to impact your psyche. As such, not only do you have to absorb the Golden Dragon King's energy, you also have to constantly make sure that you don't lose yourself to its power. Otherwise, it's quite possible that you could fall under the control of the Golden Dragon King's will. Tang Wuling drew a sharp breath upon hearing this. He had always known that the Golden Dragon King seals within his body were extremely dangerous, but he didn't think that the final 9 seals would be this perilous. What should I do then? Old Tang, if this essence contains the will of the Golden Dragon King, then wouldn't my spiritual power and mind also be impacted? How can such terrifying power? Old Tang clasped his hands behind his back and said in a serious voice, you have to realize that even in the divine realm, the Golden Dragon King was one of the most powerful first-rank gods. Tang Wuling's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. Is it true that the Golden Dragon King was a part of the Dragon God? Old Tang turned to him with a rather surprised expression. You already know about that. This was an indirect confirmation to Tang Wuling's question. You knew about this as well, didn't you? Also, what are first-rank gods? Old Tang explained. Generally speaking, all gods are supposed to be equal in the divine realm, but in reality, there is a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is based primarily on power. The weakest gods are referred to as godly officials, and above them are the third-rank gods, followed by second-rank gods, then first-rank gods. The most powerful gods are known as god kings, and they are the enforcers of laws in the past divine realm. What I'm telling you about now only applies to humans who become gods. For beasts, the situation is rather similar, but there's only one beast-type god king, which is the dragon god. In terms of individual combat prowess, the dragon god is actually more powerful than all of the 5 human god kings, but the human god kings still hold the advantage when it comes to overall power. The dragon god perished during its battle against the human god kings, and that was how it was split into the Golden Dragon King and the Silver Dragon King. It could be said that the Golden Dragon King is comparable in power to a human god king, and it's certainly more powerful than all of the first-rank gods. As such, you can imagine how terrifying the power contained within the final 9 seals is. How difficult do you think it would be to completely absorb and convert this power? I noticed you referred to the past divine realm. I've heard that it's been many years since someone on the Douluo continent managed to become a god. Does the divine realm no longer exist? A slightly lost expression appeared in Old Tang's eyes, and he sighed. No, the divine realm still exists. It's just that we're no longer able to contact it. However, if you can truly break all of the Golden Dragon King seals and absorb all of the energy they contain, then you'll possess enough power to create your own divine realm and dictate the laws within that realm. Tang Wuling drew a sharp breath upon hearing this. He had thought that he already held an extremely high opinion of the Golden Dragon King seals within his body, but at the very most, he had thought that he'd perhaps be able to reach the limit Douluo level after absorbing all of the energy contained within the seals. However, Old Tang was telling him that he'd become a god king instead. That was insane. Tang Wuling was no longer the ignorant little boy who couldn't even sense the presence of the Golden Dragon King seals within his body. These seals contained enough power to elevate him to the god king level, but they also posed an unfathomably extreme threat to his life. Even at the rate that he was currently progressing, the probability that he'd be able to absorb all of the energy within the seals was infinitely approaching zero. Tang Wuling gulped nervously before turning to Old Tang with a wry smile on his face. I'm not far from death, am I? Old Tang was silent for a moment. Perhaps. Tang Wuling's expression fell slightly, and he asked, Old Tang, can you give me an accurate estimation of how long I'll be able to last with my current bodily condition, and how many seals I'll be able to break during that time? Old Tang shook his head in response. There's no way for me to make that estimation as your bodily condition has already exceeded my original projections. You're only 21 years old this year, yet the power you currently possess is at a level that I projected for you to attain at 25 years of age. The 12th seal is the human limit. Every successive seal that you break after that takes you up 1 godly rank. Judging from the current level of stability of these seals, I can only tell you that you'll most likely break the 12th seal within 10 years, and that the 13th seal will most definitely be broken within 15 years. When that time comes, not only will you have to face the issues plaguing your body, you'll also have to oppose the power of laws of this world. Tang Wuling folded slightly upon hearing this. The power of laws? What's that? Old Tang explained. There are invisible laws in all worlds. The divine realm has a set of laws, as does the human world. The laws of the human world stipulate that godly beings cannot exist here. Countless limit Douluos have appeared in the human race during these past years, so why have they been unable to break through their limits and become gods? It's not because they lack the aptitude to do so. Instead, it's because there are no godly births available to accept them, so they have to be subjected to the oppression of the power of laws, and they're unable to overcome that final hurdle. You'll also be facing the same problem. There will be no godly births available to accept you, so if your 13th seal is broken, not only will you have to withstand the power contained within that seal, you'll also be oppressed by the power of laws of the entire Douluo continent. Old Tang's voice trailed off there, but Tang Wuling could imagine the tragic fate that awaited him if that were to happen. A wry smile appeared on his face, and he sighed. Looks like there are no other possibilities then. Does this mean I'll only get to live for a maximum of 15 more years? His Golden Dragon King bloodline had given him enormous power, but it had also significantly shortened his lifespan. Old Tang nodded, and said, however, nothing is absolute. If you can take that step and make the final breakthrough, perhaps you'll have a bright future ahead. If you can reach the godly tier, perhaps you'll be able to establish your own divine realm. The chances of that are extremely slim, but I exist solely to help you overcome that final hurdle. Tang Wuling turned to Old Tang, and he suddenly said, don't tell me what my chances are. Old Tang faltered slightly upon hearing this before a smile appeared on his face for the first time since their reunion. You've grown up. Tang Wuling also smiled in response. I have. At the very least, I'll have more courage if I don't know just how slim my chances are. I'll do everything in my power to fight no matter what. So what does it matter even if I can't make that final breakthrough? All I can do is make sure that I have no regrets, regardless of what the outcome turns out to be. Old Tang, I want you to tell me one thing. When should I break my 10th seal? Should I try to delay it for as long as possible or do it as early as possible? Old Tang immediately replied without any hesitation. As early as possible. Tang Wuling was rather taken aback to hear this. You didn't say this about the first 9 seals. Old Tang explained. That's different. For the first 9 seals, I was afraid that your body wouldn't be able to handle the influxes of energy. However, seeing as your body has become more powerful than I projected, you have to begin to absorb the power of the remaining seals as quickly as possible. This is because in a sense, the final 9 seals are part of one unified entity. In other words, the energy of the Golden Dragon King is one whole entity. If you can absorb a portion of this power, then the overall pressure that the seals would have to withstand would be lessened, and that would allow the seals to hold themselves together for longer, thereby buying you more time. Do you understand what I'm saying? Chapter 978. Tang Wuling nodded and replied, I understand. What you're saying is that the Golden Dragon King seals are like 9 panels in deep water. If the layer of water at the very top is to be drawn away, then the panel at the very top has to be removed. This would alleviate the weight that the rest of the panels would have to withstand, and it would therefore take them longer to crumble. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Hence, as long as you can ensure your own safety, it's in your best interest to break the remaining seals as quickly as possible in order to buy you more time before the 13th seal gets broken on its own. At the same time, absorbing the energy within seals earlier will allow you to become more powerful at a faster rate, so you'll be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I understand. I'll break the 10th seal as soon as I materialize my soul core, Tang Wuling said in a determined manner. Old Tang nodded firmly, and said, that would be best. A contemplative look appeared on his face. There's so much to do, but I have so little time left. He only had around 15 years left to live, yet he still had to revive Shrek Academy. There was simply no time for him to waste. Old Tang continued, we've discussed the dangers that you'll have to face in the future. Do you have any questions about your cultivation? As your powers increased, I've also been recovering more and more of my memories, so I can provide you with some guidance. Tang Wuling replied, the main issue I'm facing in my cultivation lies in my 9 arts of the Golden Dragon. Those techniques were taught to me by my grandteacher, but he passed away during the Shrek Academy bombing. Hence, I never had a chance to learn the 3 final arts, which are related to domains. Now that I've attained a dragon core, I feel like I'm ready to cultivate those 3 arts. Also, as I become more powerful, my Golden Dragon Spear has has become more and more useful in battle, but I can only rely on my speed and power to wield the spear. The Tang sect doesn't have any particularly good spear techniques, and it feels like I'm not making full use of my most powerful weapon. A faint smile appeared on Old Tang's face upon hearing this. None of these are major issues. Regarding the 9 arts of the Golden Dragon, all you actually have to learn are the first 6 arts. The final 3 domain-related abilities can't be learned. They can only be self-taught. This is most likely why that Douluo didn't directly bestow those techniques upon you. After you attain domain, you have to create abilities that belong only to you, rather than purely try to learn from others. Only the techniques created by you are the most suitable for yourself. Didn't you already think everything through before I called you here? Integrating your bloodline power and your martial soul is something that you have to do in the future. Tang Wulin's eyes lit up, and he seemed to have grasped something after hearing this. Perhaps he would be able to truly say about integrating his blood essence and martial soul after he attained the soul core. As for a spear technique, Old Tang smiled and said, "I've already got one prepared. This spear technique was created by God, and it's perfect for you." A spear technique created by God? Tang Wulin's eyes immediately lit up. That's right. You'll have to patiently ponder the technique and cultivate it in a painstaking manner. I'm going to bestow upon you the first technique today. It's called Fury of the Masses. Old Tang waved his right hand through the air as he spoke, and a golden spear that was identical to Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear appeared in his grasp. He pointed the spear forward, and a burst of light erupted forth like lightning. Countless streaks of golden light blossomed in the air, and in that instant, Tang Wulin felt as if his body had been punctured by boundless spear intent. It felt as if even his soul had been completely destroyed by the spear intent. Just as he was about to cry out in agony, the spear intent suddenly receded, and was greeted by the sight of a massive golden spear flashing past his eyes. All of the golden light converged toward that giant spear, and it seemed to be threatening to puncture the entire heavens. This was what a true spear technique should be. After an indeterminate period of time, Tang Wulin awakened from his meditation. His clothes had been completely soaked with sweat, but he was feeling extremely elated. Old Tang had fallen into hibernation again, and he told Tang Wulin that he would awaken again once he truly mastered this Fury of the Masses technique. At this moment, Tang Wulin's mind was entirely filled with spear intent. This was the first time that he discovered that spears could be used in such a manner. Old Tang had told him that the spear was the king of all weapons. If he wanted to master powerful spear techniques, then he'd have to walk his own regal path. Tang Wulin was immersed in spear intent for an entire day, and he only returned to his senses after his alarm went off the next day, alerting him that it was time for his Mecha battle. Time sure had flown by. With his dragon core, he wasn't feeling hungry at all even though he hadn't eaten for an entire day and night. He entered the star cabin and logged onto the battle net. Light flashed, and he appeared at the Western Competition Region Sports Stadium again. However, Tang Wulin felt as if his brain was completely numb, and his mind was still entirely filled with nothing but spear intent. He arrived at the Mecha battle area of the sports stadium. Your match is about to commence. Please choose your Mecha type: melee combat or long-range attack. Melee combat. Tang Wulin reflexively made a choice, and only after the choice was made did he realize that he'd made the wrong choice. Please select a weapon for your melee combat mecha. The electronic voice sounded again, and a comprehensive series of over 10 weapon options were presented to him. Do we get a choice of weapons during the official rounds of the competition? Tang Wulin was very elated to see this, and he chose a spear almost without any hesitation. He was currently still completely immersed in spear intent, and even though piloting a mecha was different from actually using a spear, a truly proficient mecha pilot was supposed to treat their mecha as an extension of their own body. Light flashed, and a melee combat mecha that was around 12 meters tall appeared within the competition venue with Tang Wulin sitting within it. A supermassive spear that was around 15 meters in length had appeared in the mecha's hand, and it was very intimidating to behold. He was facing a long-range attacking mecha that was holding a soul cannon, and it didn't appear as if long-range mecha pilots were offered any alternative weapon choices. Could it be that melee combat mechas were considered to be at a disadvantage, and they were given weapon choices to level the playing field? The roles had been completely reversed during this battle compared to in his practice mecha battles. 3, 2, 1, begin. The electronic voice was always so straightforward and concise. Boom, boom, boom. The long-range attacking mecha unleashed 3 cannon blasts from the get-go, and the attacks hurtled directly toward Tang Wulin in a triangular formation. Tang Wulin's mecha gripped onto its massive spear, and all of a sudden, boundless spear intent appeared before his eyes. The spear in the mecha's hand was thrust forward 3 times in lightning-fast succession, and the 3 cannon blasts were detonated almost instantaneously while the mecha remained completely still on the spot. This wasn't the Fury of the Masses spear technique. Instead, it was a combination of Tang Wulin's mecha handling skills in conjunction with his pure speed and strength. However, as he unleashed those spear strikes, the feeling was completely different. He was wielding the king of all weapons, and he had to walk his own path of regal dominance. Boom, 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 boom. 5 more cannon blasts were sent flying toward him. His spear was thrust forward 5 times to dispel his opponent's attacks, but his mecha still hadn't moved even a single step. He was beginning to get into the zone, even though he was only unleashing the simplest of spear thrusts. Every time his spear was thrust forward, Tang Wulin felt as if the spear's trajectories were creating a series of regal paths. Spear projections flashed through the air, and the opposing long-range attacking mecha pilot was feeling quite perplexed. Generally speaking, during a battle between a melee combat mecha and a long-range attacking mecha, the former would always try to close down the gap between the 2 mechas as quickly as they could. As such, Tang Wulin's tactic of standing still on the spot and allowing himself to be bombarded by long-range attacks was something that had never been seen in a competition before. Chapter 979. However, that was exactly what he was doing, and the opposing long-range attacking mecha pilot was at a complete loss for what to think. They could only continue to run circles around Tang Wulin's mecha while unleashing a relentless string of cannon blasts. The long-range attacking mecha pilot was more than happy to engage in a battle of energy expenditure, as the melee combat mecha would definitely give out first if things were to continue like this. Even though that massive spear could detonate the oncoming cannon blasts, the resulting shockwaves from the explosions would chip away at the mecha's energy reserves. Long-range attacking mechas had inferior defenses and speed compared to melee combat mechas, but they had far greater energy reserves in comparison, so a battle of energy expenditure played right into their hands. At this moment, Tang Wulin's opponent was wondering how they'd been paired up with such a strange opponent. Had he entered the competition just to throw the match and get eliminated in the first round? However, Tang Wulin's thought process was completely different. In his eyes, the relentless string of oncoming cannon blasts were targets that he could use to practice his spear techniques. He felt as if the trajectories of each and every spear thrust were being branded into his mind. After just a short while, he had already unleashed over 100 spear thrusts, so over 100 trajectories had been cemented into his mind. This was an extremely intriguing feeling, and he repeated the process of drawing back his spear before thrusting it forward over and over again. He was wielding the king of all weapons, and he had to walk his own path of regal dominance. Both sides were constantly expending energy, and the melee combat mecha was constantly being bombarded by long-range attacks without making any attempt to take evasive measures. Even though it was merely standing on the spot and using its weapon to detonate enemy attacks, it was still expending energy at a far faster rate than its opponent. After about 10 minutes, Tang Wulin's mecha had become dangerously low on energy, and the light in the internal control room had turned red to warn him of this. However, Tang Wulin still controlled his mecha to thrust its spear forward over and over again in a completely unflustered manner. The Fury of the Masses had to be honed through countless identical spear strikes, and that was the essence of this technique. Old Tang had told him that if he wanted to master this technique, he'd have to unleash at least 10 million spear strikes during battle. 10 million spear strikes, and all of them had to be unleashed during battles. That was an extremely enormous number. However, Tang Wulin wasn't daunted in the slightest by the task that lay ahead of him. This battle provided him with a perfect training opportunity. Beep beep beep. An alert tone rang out, notifying him that his mecha's energy reserves had dipped below 10%. The cannon blasts unleashed by his opponent also became more frequent and ferocious. His opponent had clearly already calculated the total amount of energy that his melee combat mecha possessed with a high level of precision. Tang Wulin's mecha finally sprang into action. It abruptly rushed forward, and the propeller on its back immediately lit up. Even though it was on the verge of running out of power, it was still charging directly toward the long-range battle mecha. He had to win, of course. He would only be able to continue to compete and have more opportunities to hone his spear techniques if he could win this battle. A derisive sneer appeared on the face of the long-range attacking mecha pilot. There was no way that he was going to allow his opponent to succeed in their final desperate charge. Thus, he also activated his mecha's propeller, and he abruptly sped off to the side to open up distance between the 2 mechas. Even if melee combat mechas were slightly faster, it wasn't by much. Hence, it would be completely delusional to to expect to catch up to the long-range attacking mecha through only a single explosive charge. What made the long-range attacking mecha pilot even more perplexed was that his opponent's spear didn't stop. It was still rapidly thrusting through the air over and over again. All of a sudden, the melee combat mecha suddenly lit up with golden light. Soul power injection. Aside from being supplied energy by the built-in soul battery, mechas could also be fueled by energy injections from their pilots. As opposed to being alarmed by this, the long-range attacking mecha pilot was quite elated to see that Tang Wuling had been forced to resort to such measures. He continued to open up more distance between them while unleashing attacks in a calm and unhurried manner. Every good long-range attacking mecha pilot had a resolute heart and a wealth of patience. However, right at this moment, he suddenly began to sense that something was amiss. The speed of his mecha had suddenly slowed down, and an indescribable sense of fear suddenly welled up from deep within his heart. Even the massive mecha that he was situated in was unable to reassure him in the slightest. An invisible sense of pressure permeated through the air, and right at this moment, he could see that his opponent's mecha seemed to have unleashed over 100 spear strikes at once. Faint golden light was shimmering at the front tip of the spear, and the distance between the two mechas was quickly dwindling. The long-range attacking mecha pilot wanted to control his mecha to accelerate once again, but there seemed to be something invisible that was restricting, and as a result, his movements were slightly slower than he intended. This competition venue would be considered to be quite massive for a Soulmaster battle, but for mechas that were over 10 meters tall, one burst of explosive acceleration was enough to close down the distance. What's going on? The long-range attacking mecha was completely astonished, and at this point, the golden spear projections had already encompassed his entire mecha. He released his martial soul, but it was already too late. Everything had spiraled out of control, and even in the instant that his mecha was destroyed and he was teleported out of the competition venue, he still didn't understand how he had lost that battle. Tang Wuling looked on at the remains of the mecha up ahead, then glanced down at the spear in his hand. To walk a regal path, one had to have a regal heart. As soon as this thought occurred to him, he was suddenly struck by a hint of enlightenment. As he was charging forward just now, his objective wasn't actually to close down the distance between himself and his opponent. Instead, he was trying to release the hint of spear intent in his heart. His opponent clearly wasn't very powerful, so he was intimidated by Tang Wuling's spear intent. Even his mecha had been unable to buffer that intimidation effect. It was exactly because of this that Tang Wuling was able to get close to him so easily before taking him out with a single spear strike. Of course, that wasn't the fury of the masses. He wasn't anywhere near being able to unleash that spear technique. However, following Old Tang's guidance, Tang Wuling had already managed to grasp a hint of spear intent in such a short time. Even though it felt quite elementary, it was still enough to significantly improve his understanding of spears. A king ruled over the entirety of heaven and earth, and held everything in their grasp. A king had to possess a resolute heart even in the face of the fury of the masses. If he wanted to unleash the spear techniques of a king, then he had to first possess the heart of a king. The heart of a king was filled with absolute confidence and dedication toward the spear. After logging off from the star battle net, Tang Wuling immediately released his golden dragon spear before holding it tightly in his grasp. He had decided that from this day forth, he was going to constantly carry his spear. Only by truly sensing the spear, approaching the spear, and dedicating himself to the spear could he become one with it. I'm hungry. It's time to eat. Tang Wuling attracted a lot of attention as he carried his golden dragon spear into the cafeteria. However, there were no rules in the Blood God Legion prohibiting one from carrying weapons into the cafeteria. After all, in some dangerous situations, battles against abyssal creatures could break out at any moment, and during those times, everyone would constantly be carrying their weapons. Tang Wuling only bought one portion of food, but of course, it was from the first window. He currently had a huge wealth of accolades that couldn't contribute toward promotions, so he certainly wasn't going to cut corners when it came to food. He held his spear with his left hand and ate with his right. Whoa, what's going into you, brother? Jiang Wuyu sat down beside Tang Wuling and appraised his golden dragon spear with a surprised look on his face. Tang Wuling smiled and replied, I've recently been practicing a spear technique, and constantly holding the spear is helping me in this process. That's all you're going to eat today? Jiang Wuyu couldn't help but gulp at the sight of the delicacies on Tang Wuling's plate. Only then did Tang Wuling notice that Jiang Wuyu's epaulette suggested that he'd already been promoted to the colonel rank. It seemed that for those who were powerful enough to capitalize on it, abyssal tides were brilliant opportunities for accelerated promotion. Congratulations, Colonel, Tang Wuling chuckled. Jiang Wuyu asked, why haven't you been promoted? Based on your performance from that day, you should be a captain by now. I should be the one congratulating you. You're already a member of the Blood God Battalion, but I'm still nowhere near it. My father told me that this martial soul of mine is quite powerful, but I'm going to have a hard time improving after I get to the title Douluo stage. That makes sense, considering this isn't a true dragon bloodline. After all, I assume that's why the Blood God Battalion doesn't want me. Tang Wuling was quite surprised to hear this. How could the Blood God Battalion not want you? You possess a tyrant dragon martial soul. Jiang Wuyu explained. I've heard rumors that only people with martial souls that have the potential to take them to the limit Douluo stage have the right to join the Blood God Battalion. You clearly fit that criterion, so you're a fringe member now. Do you know how many people in our legion are working their butts off every day so they can become a fringe member of the Blood God Battalion? You've only been here for about a month. I'm so envious. I'll treat you to one portion of food from the first window, Tang Wuling offered with a smile. Jiang Wuyu's eyes immediately lit up. I don't think one portion is going to be enough. Fine, then you're not getting anything. With Tang Wuling's stingy personality, he wouldn't be treating anyone to meals unless he was quite fond of them. Jiang Wuyu chuckled. All right, one portion it is. Then, the two of them chatted as they ate, and the conversation naturally drifted toward the Star Battle Net Inter-Federation competition. I've passed the first round. All I can do now is pray that I don't get paired up with you before I make it into the top 32. Jiang Wuyu said in a serious voice. A wry smile appeared on his face. Do you think I'd be happy to come up against you? Jiang Wuyu continued. With your powers, you should be able to make it into the top 32 with no issues. But there's always an element of luck involved in competitions like this, so we'll see how it goes. You look like you're taking this very seriously. Oh, chapter 980. He pointed at Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear as he spoke. He was very fond of this badass golden spear, but he could only stay away from it after learning that he couldn't touch the spear. Tang Wuling also took a glance at the golden dragon spear in his own hand. His heart was filled with pride at the sight of its intrinsic golden color and massive spearhead. This was the spear of a king. He had to master its true meaning. Otherwise, he would be doing a great disservice to this conjoined divine weapon of his. That's right, in Tang Wuling's heart, his golden dragon spear was a divine weapon. Without it, how would he have possibly been able to materialize a dragon core so quickly? Jiang Wuyu was looking at the golden dragon spear with a hint of envy in his eyes as he asked, You're getting close to rank 60 soul power, right? Do you need a new soul spirit? Over here, we have to go to the Spirit Pagoda in the Scorching Basin. The Spirit Pagoda provides soul spirits to our Blood God Legion, and they're all of a very high caliber. Tang Wuling shook his head in response. I already have a suitable soul spirit. The beautiful silk tulip was still situated within his seat of nature, so of course he had a suitable soul spirit already. He could sense the auras of the beautiful silk tulip and the other plant system great beasts at all times, and it could be said that they were some of his greatest assets. Grey winds swept over the land, and everything was completely bleak and desolate here. The entire world was grey in color, as if it had been constructed from countless ashes. There was no end in sight to this grey world. There was no sun and no stars, only boundless grey as far as the eyes could see. In the distance, there was only a deeper shade of grey, and if a living being were to come here, the only thing that they'd be able to sense would be the despair of this place. There was boundless despair proliferating into the distance, stretching into infinity and beyond. At this moment, there was a person slowly walking through this world that was filled with despair. His entire body was enshrouded under a large black cloak, and a layer of black energy was being released from his body, keeping the grey color around him at bay. If everything in this world were despair, then the aura emanating from his body would be death. Death and despair didn't conflict with one another. Why have you come here? A low rumbling voice suddenly sounded in all directions. The entire grey world then became warped and twisted as if it had become a gargantuan grey vortex. The figure in black finally stopped before slowly raising his head. Two beams of purple light erupted from his eyes from beneath the hood of his black cloak. I was only able to come here with your guidance. Isn't that right, Abyssal Monarch? What do you want? The low voice cut straight to the chase. Our objectives have always essentially been the same. You want to devour everything to elevate the abyss and make that world a part of your abyssal plane. What I want is countless vengeful spirits. I want to become a god of death and create a divine realm that is built on the foundation of death. Hence, our ultimate objectives are the same. The warping in the surrounding area suddenly ceased, and the grey world of despair returned to its original state. In the distance, a grey figure slowly began to make their way toward the black figure. The black figure slowly raised his head to reveal a pale chin, and a faint smile of satisfaction appeared on his face. He knew that his straightforward declaration had been enough to tempt the grey figure up ahead, and no one would be able to stop the implementation of his plan. The destruction was only just beginning. What was extremely laughable to him was that those idiots thought that he had unleashed those Godslayer missiles simply to take revenge. But unbeknownst to them, his objective was to sacrifice the entire Douluo continent to establish his paramount divine kingdom. But then again, he couldn't expect trash like them to be able to comprehend his lofty aspirations. Those people were only going to be ants that he would stomp into the ground. Ever since he chose to become the leader of the Holy Spirit cult, he had already set this grand yet distant goal for himself, and this was the ideal opportunity for him. The two figures gradually approached one another, and the surrounding area began to warp and twist again. However, a hint of black had appeared within the grey color. Despair, death, destruction, alliteration. LOL. Light flashed, and Tang Wuling logged onto the star battle net once again. There were two arrows above his head, one golden and one silver, and both of them were pointing upward. The silver arrow had appeared after he secured victory in his first mega battle, and it was clearly an indication that he progressed to the next round. The second round of the competition arrived earlier than he anticipated. This was one of the main benefits of holding a competition in a high-tech battle net. Even with a vast number of participants, the competition could be wrapped up in a very short time. This was far more convenient than holding a similar competition in real life. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face, and he encircled his arms before him to hold the golden dragon spear to his chest. He was still constantly holding onto his spear. The hilt of the spear was shimmering with dazzling golden light, but it was far smaller than it normally was. Tang Wuling had only been holding his spear for 2 days, but he'd already gained a greater understanding of his golden dragon spear. At the very least, he discovered that the size of the spear could be adjusted according to his will. At this moment, the golden dragon spear in his hand was only around 2 feet in length, and the light shimmering from it was quite reserved, so it didn't attract as much attention. In its current petite form, it was quite intricate and adorable to look at. The second round of the competition was about to commence. Tang Wuling wondered what kind of opponent he was going to be facing today. He didn't want his luck to be as good as it was in the first round. He'd constantly been cultivating his soul power and immersing himself in spear intent recently, and that made him eager for a more powerful opponent. Only a more powerful opponent would be able to better stimulate his latent potential. A faint smile appeared on his face, and he did some stretches before striding toward the competition venue. At this moment, there were a series of figures in front of him that were transforming into streaks of light to head to their battles. All of the participants who were here today had golden arrows that were pointing upward above their heads. After the first round of elimination matches, the number of participants had most likely already been halved, and at the conclusion of this round, it should be halved again. It's time for your match. Little Tang, prepare for battle. Light flashed, and he entered the competition venue. He was still holding his golden dragon spear as he cast his gaze up ahead. His opponent was quite tall and slender, and it seemed to be a woman. Her nickname had been concealed, and her face was hidden behind a mask, so he couldn't glean any visual information about her. 3, 2, 1, begin. Tang Wuling. A furious voice rang out from up ahead. Tang Wuling was immediately rooted to the spot. This was way too familiar. No way. What was this luck of his? That's right, the voice belonged to none other than Long Yakshu. Prior to the commencement of the first round, Long Yakshu had threatened him, telling him that he had to surrender if he were to face her in the competition. However, it was only the second round, and they'd already been pitted against one another. What a dramatic yet comical turn of events. It was undoubtedly the case that Long Yakshu had identified Tang Wuling based on the golden dragon spear that he was holding. They had just had breakfast together not long ago. Tang Wuling was completely speechless. Don't think that your victory is assured against me. Come at me with all you've got. Long Yakshu's voice had taken on a frosty tone, and the temperature on the competition platform was also plummeting. Tang Wuling couldn't help but heave a resigned sigh. He would be brimming with battle intent if he were facing any other opponent, but he simply couldn't muster up the urge to fight her. He was very grateful toward Long Yakshu as she had helped him extensively ever since he joined the Blood God Legion. It could be said that without her help, there was no way that he would have been able to integrate himself into the Legion so quickly. If she hadn't taken him to experience practical combat in the Abyss, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to display his abilities and catch the eyes of the Blood Gods. However, this competition was related to the mission that he'd been assigned, and his performance would determine whether he'd have the right to apply for a break to visit his lover, so he couldn't afford to lose. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.